Hey guys, welcome to the 40th episode of the Learning Podcast. And if you aren't sure, it's a Singaporean podcast dedicated to learning something new from every single guest on this show. And today I have a friend I knew through a mutual friend, and his name is Vishnu. Vishnu, thanks so much for taking the time to be on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for your time too. It's an honor for me to be here.
A little context about Vishnu, right? I think we actually were connected in December by one of our mutual friends, Kin Singh, and Kin Singh is actually the first guest on my podcast, and I'll be excited to have him back on. But we have had like back and forth conversations. Then there was this COVID thing that happened. Then we finally got around to do this, and a couple of reasons why I think this conversation will be helpful. Vishnu himself, he is the CEO and founder of Invigilo Technologies. It's a startup at the NUS. It's incubated at the NUS hangar, and it's supported by the National University of Singapore. And the startup that Vishnu is working on is extremely technical, is extremely niche. And if I may read and go through the LinkedIn description, right, it's a one-stop intelligent video analytics platform to ensure high standards of safety and productivity at construction sites. A very specific niche. And what Vishnu does, I believe that he does a lot of technical work in a sense whereby he is like coding, he's creating features onto this software product-ish. So I was earlier telling Vishnu that I was very envious of software, because the thing about software is that it's infinitely scalable. After developers pour their blood, sweat and tears into it for a couple of months, right, you have that product, and that product can be scaled infinitely, whether it's based in Singapore. I'm sure from my initial thoughts of looking at what Vishnu idea and business is based on, I'm sure that it can easily go global in a sense whereby he can just go to China, he can go to big macro markets whereby his product will be needed. Okay, but on that end, I know it's very technical, so I'll leave it more to Vishnu to elaborate more on the specific features on that side. And this podcast, I believe, is really for potential entrepreneurs, in a sense whereby if you're ever thinking of starting your own business, I believe that Vishnu here can share a lot of insights. He has been in this journey for about 1 year now. Vishnu is actually from the same batch as me as well, from the National University of Singapore, and the path that we have went through is extremely different. He has went on the entrepreneur path, which is extremely tough, extremely lonely, extremely grueling as well, whereas I went to the corporate path in that sense. But I still think that there are principles that I would like him to share in a sense, and I think it will be useful that way. And Vishnu is also he also went to Silicon Valley for the national NUS Overseas College Program, whereby undergraduates like us are sent overseas to do internship programs as well in various parts of the world. Vishnu himself went to Silicon Valley, I went to Beijing, China, and we have our different experiences from there. So that's a little context of this podcast. And Vishnu, for those listeners that don't know who you are, could you give a introduction if I've missed anything out?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I think it's pretty cool what you're doing. And yeah, I mean, that was a pretty comprehensive introduction, I must say. So basically, you mentioned earlier on that I was doing a lot of coding, software development. Actually, I'm not the coder myself, but of course I do the technical architecture and lay out all the foundations, and the whole thing's laid out by me. But I have a team of talented software developers and artificial intelligence engineers who do all the awesome work that you see in the front end. So basically, I myself have graduated from NUS the same time as you have last year, July 2019. I'm a huge fan of entrepreneurship. I, in fact, started my so-called startup, or I would say a project, in year 2 of university. It was aimed at education. It's like an ed tech startup where we wanted to teach students technical skills. And the one crucial thing that we added on top of that was actually teaching them how to teach one another. So the startup was called Nucleate because we wanted to nucleate the education system in Singapore. So we taught things like Arduino programming, 3D printing, 3D modeling, this kind of stuff, and then teach them how to teach one another. So that's like my whole first venture into entrepreneurship. Then, of course, like you mentioned, I went on the NOC Silicon Valley program. That was a huge life-changing experience for myself, following which I did work for a couple of months as a business analyst. So still in the entrepreneurial side of things. So the reason I chose this path after graduation was because I wanted to be on the other side of a startup, because I was always the founding and I was always like ideating and stuff, but I wanted to know what the venture capitalists and VCs look at startups, from what perspective they look at startups. So that was why I joined Venture Builder for getting that kind of exposure. After which I decided it was time to try my own journey, try my own venture. And that was when I decided, okay, I knew both sides of the table. I have a lot of energy and passion. So let's start my own startup. And that's how Invigilo formed. And yeah, apart from the whole startup thingy, I love material science because that's where I graduated from. So I still continually read up research articles, materials science related stuff like solar energy, electric batteries, things like this. And I love playing frisbee, and I do a bit of calisthenics. So that's like my kind of introduction as a whole. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks so much. Right? If I were to go all the way back when you chose this niche, can you just perhaps paint a picture on how you came to the decision on choosing such a specific niche in preventing safety hazards in construction sites? Right? Could you paint us where this idea came from for the business you're currently working on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think a lot of people have asked me the question because there are many elements to it, and I'll go through one at a time. So firstly is like a couple of my friends were already working in like safety in high-risk environments, like construction sites specifically. There was this other group that was working on that. They were dealing with like smart helmets and smart systems to recognize. So by smart helmets, I mean like you attach a device on their helmet, like for workers, and you can track location. So you'll know where all the workers are and like whether someone suddenly disappears or like is missing, and you know it's for safety purposes. And that was more of like hardware. I wasn't really involved in that, but that was like those two are my close friends, and we kind of kept the conversation going once in a while, and I helped them with my experience at NOC, the NUS Overseas Colleges program. And yeah, once in a while I used to sort of consult them. And that was where my whole experience with construction industry started from. Then, as I've mentioned earlier, I was very passionate in the education space. So I've always wanted to start up an education technology-based startup. But then suddenly I pivoted to this construction domain. And the main reason why is because, firstly, education is super saturated. Like there are thousands of startups doing education technology. And I mean, I'm not saying anything against those people because it has to be like that, because you need this kind of energy and this kind of drive to continually push for a change in the education system. But that's something which I saw as a major no for me, because I was someone who wanted to go big and go viral. I wanted to create something that can really go global. So that's the main reason. And the second thing is, I always believe that passion is actually something temporal. It is not fixated. You don't actually have a firm passion. Passion to me comprises of like financial and emotional stability. So like when you have both financial and emotional stability, that's what becomes passion to you. And to me, nuclear or like the whole education space was more of like emotional stability, not really financial, because the market size is small. The industry was not growing as fast. There was a lot of reluctance to change. And that was when I realized, hey, actually the construction industry is huge. There's a huge potential for growth. Productivity rates have been dropping. Safety hazards have been increasing. There's this huge opportunity for change in the construction domain. That was one of the reasons why I got intrigued to explore that sector. And the third thing, conveniently, I took part in this international competition called InCube 2019 Challenge, where you basically perform design thinking. It's like a hackathon. From inside of a glass cube, you live in a glass cube with 4 others for 4 days. And the theme of this glass cube was actually smart construction sites. So everything fit together when I got chosen to that competition. And suddenly, I realized like it was the theme. The theme is actually released on the day itself. Like you don't know the theme until you start living in the cube. So I didn't know the theme until I went into the glass cube, and suddenly the theme was smart construction sites. So it was pretty funny. Like everything was lined up because I was already engaging with my friends on the construction safety, like with the helmets and with other devices. And suddenly I went into the glass cube, and it was like a same kind of a problem statement. So that was where I generated the whole idea, and I ventured into the whole construction technology domain.
So, so technically, like the stars align in such a perfect sense, right? Can you share more about this startup competition? Like, do you literally live in the cube with your team, or was it like a whole day hackathon? Like, how long was this competition for?
So it's actually 3 weeks long. The first 2 weeks you get a fully sponsored flight to Switzerland. So like think about it, you get chosen from Singapore. 5 of you get chosen from Singapore. Everything is like,
Wow.
yeah. You go to Zurich. We went to Zurich for 10 days, and we learned like the concepts of design thinking and the whole lean startup methodology. That was something I have always been familiar with, but it's always refreshing to learn it from other cultures. That was pretty cool though. Like I learned that design thinking, when you put it into place with different cultural backgrounds, right? Singaporean design thinking is very different from Zurich design thinking. Like because Singapore is like a kind of the cultural presence in Europe and Switzerland in general is a whole lot different from Singapore. In Singapore, we're used to like Chinese, Indian, Malay, and like those are main races. But in Switzerland, it's like a mix of Germans, Italians, French, and you get a lot more diversity in terms of thinking and thought processes, which also affect the design thinking in itself. Like although the methodology is the same, the way each step in the methodology is done is actually very different from what Singaporeans do. So I was pretty amazed. And yeah, 10 days there, and then we come back to Singapore, and we lived in a glass cube in the beside the URA building. The famous hawker center. I forgot the name actually. Yeah, we lived there for, it's beside Ann Siang Hill. So we lived there for like 4 days, like literally inside there. So we sleep there, we shower in the building beside, but it's like whole day and night. So we slept there, we ideated there, we put post-it notes all over the glass cube so people could see what we're doing. We had like meditation phases where we just sit down and meditate, and people are free to go in and out, and not go in and out of glass cube, but go past and just look at us and observe us. The whole premise was like you do design thinking you think outside the box from inside the box, because you see like the people, like you're solving a problem for the people and you can see them as they walk past you. So that's the whole concept. Yeah.
Can you paint a 101 introduction, right, for perhaps some listeners out there, or even me as well? Can you give a 101 to what is design thinking and what are the key components that make up it?
Okay. That's a very good question. Design thinking consists of a few crucial steps. I won't go into each individual steps in particular, but the whole concept is designing with the target customer in mind. So you basically have to first identify the target customer that you're trying to solve for. So in this case, if you have construction industry, if people who are not familiar with the construction industry, there's like a whole range of stakeholders, from architects to real estate planners to mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, plumbers, to the actual contractors who do the building. Then you have plumbers, you have all the subcontractors who do that. So you have a whole range of target customers. You can't have a one solution for everyone. So first you have a theme, then you have a problem statement, and then you identify the target customer. So this process is called like defining the problem statement. So you basically define what you're trying to do, following which you actually ideate or come up with several solutions. So you don't say there's no such thing as a bad idea. So it can be any kind of idea. So you spend like a few hours, literally a whole group, just putting in all kinds of crazy ideas. Could be like anything, build buildings in Mars because it's cheap there. I mean, anything, like literally don't cancel anything. And then you go into the process of prototyping. So from all these ideas that you create, you actually choose a few good ideas, or like the shortlisted ones based on group discussions and based on several restrictions, and you prototype something out. And once you prototype this thing out with the target customer in mind, you actually bring this prototype to the target customers and get their feedback. And following which the feedback, and then that's called testing. And once this testing is done, you go back to a drawing board again. So based on the results that you obtain from the testing phase, you go back to the drawing board where you define the whole problem statement again, and you prototype. You ideate, you prototype, and you test again. So it's like a continuous cycle until you get a solution that's most widely accepted by the target customer. And the most crucial element of design thinking is actually empathy. You have to empathize for the customer. You have to understand what the customer or the target audience feel like. That is a central component of design thinking. Yeah.
Got it. Because back when I was at WeWork, I saw like all the design sprint workshops. Then they talk about this brief concept. So technically, I don't have a deep understanding, but it seems like a very practical way where you just throw as much ideas out, and not because I think sometimes when we were at the NUS Overseas College, right, we usually shoot down ideas like very very fast, but we don't really get a chance to test them. So I find it very interesting, and I'm very interested in this as well. So in this case, right, in the case of Invigilo Technologies, right, what was your specific segment and what kind of product features did you come up from this competition, and how did it lead up from the competition to what you're doing right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in Incube, in the Incube competition, we specifically targeted contractors and safety officers, like general contractors, so the ones who are in charge of getting the whole building, the whole project built. So it's not targeted with the architects, it's not to do with the real estate planners, it's not to do with the facilities management people, but rather the ones building the workers you see every day, and the building stage, the building phase. And the problem we chose was safety and productivity. And before I go further, I want to mention that Invigilo Technologies kind of pivoted slightly away from the winning idea from the Incube competition. So an Incube was more futuristic. Of course, that's a vision for Invigilo, but you can't, the idea is so futuristic that you can't actually carry it out with, like in today's technologies. So what the idea at Incube was, it was called OmniSight. And as the name suggests, OmniSight meaning you see everything. So what we were trying to do was actually have kind of a portable camera placed in the workers, as they start working and they start doing things around the construction site, to gain an understanding of what they're doing, who the worker is, and whether they're working safely or not. And as they're building the thing, you can also kind of piece the pictures together. So like, let's say you have 10 workers at different locations. Based on what they're seeing and their GPS coordinates, you can reconstruct the whole building as it's been built. So you can imagine almost like a game. So, if you played World of Warcraft, that was our inspiration actually. You play StarCraft or World of Warcraft, you have like a dashboard that shows you how many people you have, how many people are idle, the kind of money you have, the resources, and how the buildings are going, how the buildings are being built. So that is the whole premise of this solution. There are of course a lot more details for this, but it'll take a very long time to explain every single thing. But the whole premise was like understanding, using video analytics and artificial intelligence to identify what the worker is doing and whether they're doing it safely. And at the end of the day, you want to know who is doing what, where, and when, so nothing goes wrong and everything is done optimally. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Because on Invigilo Technologies LinkedIn page, right, I really saw a lot of interesting demos, and one of the demos that I saw was that it can actually detect people who aren't obeying the social distance rules and people who aren't wearing masks. I know there's like a separate product offering that you guys have, but in terms of the developmental stage, is it like a whole suite of products? Like you talk about having like the end product having a macro dashboard for the clients in a sense whereby they are able to see everything. Is that the final product and the biggest package that you are offering to clients, or is it like more on a consultation basis whereby aside from having these features, you guys also come in with recommendations and like stats to improve the safety standards in a particular building?
Yeah, I think that's for honestly, right? I mean, so I personally am not trained in computer science. I'm not formally educated in computer science, but I've taken a lot of courses and I've done software product management certifications as well. So that's where I get my whole understanding of how to build a software product. And so another thing is the construction domain is very, very challenging. It's not one of the common industries that people usually work on, but that is what also attracted me, because the more I indulged myself in the construction domain, I realized that there's actually a lot of technology involved in construction industry. And it also surprises me pleasantly that many of the contractors and like general managers and directors of these construction companies are also aware of the kind of technologies and what artificial intelligence is and the whole process. So that makes it a lot easier for me to communicate with them and also kind of set the expectations correctly. Of course, like there are some cases where they want everything to be built. Like, you mentioned this now, the entire macro dashboard to be built. Like there are some people who want that to happen, but from a software understanding, from artificial intelligences, like the stage of with artificial AI is that it is not possible to do that yet. And bring in the complexities and dynamic nature of construction, it is never going to be, we're never going to be able to do that kind of a product as of now. So to directly answer the question which you asked, it's more of like you mentioned, consultancy kind of approach, more of targeting specific use cases. So I think this is something which entrepreneurs should also try to remember. It's not about creating a solution that you like and pushing it out to the market, but rather understanding the problem that the customers are facing and then developing a solution for that. So don't fall in love with a solution, but rather fall in love with the problem, because you need to love the problem enough to care for the problem enough to actually solve it. Because every single client, every single domain, every single kind of building you go towards is going to be different from one another. So it's impossible to cater for everyone, but rather you have to make a reasonable, you have to have a reasonable understanding, and you have to make a smart decision to cater to those that matter or the problems that are of high magnitude. So that's the kind of approach we're taking. With regards to the side product, since COVID stopped the entire construction industry, we didn't want to do nothing because it's boring to do nothing, and that's why we rolled out Invigilo Shield to basically protect workers and it can be used anywhere actually. What we do is we identify whether people are wearing masks and whether they are maintaining social distancing enforcements. And we can also detect like gathering of crowd. So in terms of a technical approach, this is not a very, very difficult thing to do. Although we are one of the early movers and we are getting a bit of users interested, and we are rolling out some pilots at this point of time. But the thing is, it's more about catering to the needs of the industry. So I feel that we are at a position that we understood the needs of the industry and we know what they want, which is why we're able to stand apart from the other competing technologies. And we so far have launched it in a dormitory. So it's something which the construction company is actually appreciative of, and they actually are using it pretty, like they like it. So that's something which we feel is important. It's not about creating a solution that is good, but it's about creating a solution that the customers like. Yeah.
Can you paint a picture, right? Let's say, because I believe that we are still fairly young people, right? When you go into these meetings with the clients, with like contractors, I'm sure my understanding of the dynamics of like contractors, like you're usually like much older, much senior, and the way that they communicate maybe is like always in Chinese or Malay or whatever language that they speak, right? So can you paint a picture to listeners, like you as a young adult, right, going into these meetings, right? Like how were there any challenges when it came to telling them what your product is, and like how in general, because I believe you have interacted with like so many contractors, people in this industry, right? What were the common questions that they have for what you offered? And yeah, in a sense, just the general challenges and perspective that you got when you first entered this industry in all the meetings. I'm actually very interested in the nitty-gritty of the meetings. Like, how did you handle like the kind of response they got from like such a high-end, innovative, in my opinion, like a very innovative thing in such a very traditional industry, if I would say.
Yeah, you got it. You asked the right question. It was very, very difficult for me to start. But I must say I'm pretty comfortable talking to people. So
can you share with us the first meeting that you went to, just to make it like perhaps as clear for listeners as much as possible?
Yeah.
One of those few encounters.
The first ever meeting I went to was with a pretty big contractor, like the international contractor, and he was the safety manager of that company. So, okay, I honestly can't remember the exact details, but all I know is that he was wondering why on earth is a material science graduate entering the construction domain, and I had no idea what the construction domain was. So, like, he was literally asking me, how come you have no experience in the construction industry and you want to do construction technology. Like, you're never gonna succeed. Like I mean, okay, sorry,
Wow.
you're never gonna succeed. Yeah, he did tell me that. So I was pretty like,
Wow.
yeah. So
Shit.
I've got a range of comments. One of them is always, "Oh, you're never gonna succeed." Common construction technology founders are usually 40 to 50 years old. That's where most successful entrepreneurs are aged at. But to me, that's just a convention. I mean, we're here to break conventions, so we are not. I'm not going to be like too affected by that. So that's one of the common things I have. I mean, it's going to be a common thing, especially when you approach these kind of brick and mortar industries, like very down to earth, very. They just want to build the product. I mean, they just want to build a company. They don't care about anything else. They just want to build the project or build the whole building within the stipulated time frame that they have. The second question they always have is the more positive ones is like, well, do you want to join my construction safety team? Can you set up my IT department for me? So there are other people who are like, can you join me? I'll pay you and you run my IT department for me. I want to get more of this kind of solution. So that's pretty heartwarming. And like, recently with the traineeship and the whole initiative to roll out traineeship programs. So a lot of companies have been asking me, hey, do you want to join my traineeship program, or do you want to join us as an IT department and we'll offer you salary, and because they want to make use of the grants also. So that was a positive thing. I mean, I was very touched by that, and I guess it's good and bad. It offers me validation that what I'm doing is the right thing. And of course, the most important question that they always ask is, what is the price? How much does it cost? So like, it always goes down to that one question, which makes or breaks the whole conversation, because the construction industry is heavily, heavily reliant on the price. The profit margins they have is about 1 or 2%. People even lose money just to get the tenders. That is a sad but ugly truth of the industry. There are a lot of contractors who lose money, who bid for projects knowing that they lose money just to win another one in the future that can make them more money. So that is the truth of the industry. So they don't care about how difficult a solution is or how much resources is spent into it. All they want to know is the price. The moment it's high, it's recurring, and it's not directly solving the problem, they just turn down the conversation. They're like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. I will get back to you. I'll ask my secretary to arrange the next meeting with you, or I'll ask my assistant safety manager to get in touch with you. So that's the kind of feedback I get from them.
So on that note, right, for the product that you're offering them, is it based on a recurring, like you talk about how like they don't like recurring things, or like how do you price your product in a sense? Is it like value based? Because in my opinion, like wow, the profit margins are already so tight, or if not even negative at times, right? So it leaves very little room for you to really extract as much value as you can in terms of financial remuneration for a company. So I mean, how do you work around that? That to me seems like a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is true, but so of course the COVID enforcement product that we have, the value add is pretty straightforward in the sense that we are trying to prevent like a transmission amongst the workers, because they are aware that safety. Okay, so I'm going to be talking in two different parts. One is a COVID product, and one is like Invigilo in general, because it's kind of a slightly different. So in terms of the COVID Shield product, Invigilo Shield product, we bring to them the assurance that with our product, you don't need to have that many security enforcements. You don't have to have continually people walking around monitoring the premises. Our system is smart enough to be able to have evidence, and definitely will. So it's like evidence management as well as protecting the workers, because some of these contractors, they don't have enough time and resources to actually be everywhere at the same time. So we are like enhancing their role. We are like being there for them. So imagine just one case of a worker getting transmission, getting in touch with getting a COVID-19, and the kind of effect that will have on the entire work site is insane. Like they have to stop the entire work site, and every single day of stop work results in average about $100,000 of loss for the construction company. So that is the kind of approach we take. And of course, we tell them, because we are the construction industry, so is dynamic and it's very tech resistant. So what we do is we actually offer trials. We give them free of charge proof of concepts. We tell them, hey, okay, we'll let you try this out for 3 weeks, or 3 days, or 1 week at most. If you like it, we will go on. If you don't like it, we will just stop. Of course, because coming from a design thinking and from a genuine background, I want to be there for the customers, and it's not going to be like those typical large scale companies who just sell and just leave it like that. We are in there for the customer. The customer's problem is our problem, so we want to put in our all to solve the customer's problem as well. So that is the kind of approach we take, and they see the genuinity. They like the fact that we're from NUS. They like the fact that we are young and we are bursting of energy. I mean, these are more approaching and welcoming of contractors, of course. And so they gave us a shot. And if the shot misses, then goodbye. We'll come back another time with a better product. But if not, then yeah, we have ourselves a good customer. And for this Invigilo Shield product itself, we want to do the community a service. So we have actually pricing it at a super low price. And it's not profit at all. Like we don't really care about profit at all. We're just trying to help the whole construction industry in general. And you mentioned that, I did mention that recurring payments is something they do not like, but at the same time, they prefer this arrangement to a certain extent because they can just cancel it as and when they want to. So they don't want to be tied down forever. So that's also another reason and another way for us to convince to them that our technology and our pricing model is superior to most other people. Yeah.
Concerning the main product, is there any could you elaborate and share more about the main product in that sense when we're working
sure.
with?
I've missed out on that. But so Invigilo's core technology lies in using computer vision and potentially Internet of Things like hardware devices to enhance site safety and productivity. And as like the typical design thinking person I am, I would like to emphasize on the problem first. So in the construction domain, for the last 600 years, productivity levels have been going down. Can you imagine that it is the only industry in the entire world to have descending productivity levels?
Why is that?
So that is how bad. Yeah, that's how bad it is. And secondly, in terms of safety, every single year in Singapore alone, you have about 15 to 20 deaths happening. So in Singapore, like a small country, you have this. In Europe, you have about 3,500 deaths in the last year. 1 in 10 workers actually get injured fatally or a serious accident in the whole world. So, that is a social aspect, like the emotional aspect of it. The workers deserve to go back to their families safely every single day. Like they're putting in their efforts, they're putting in the energy for something which we potentially be using. That is something which I feel like they deserve a safe place to be working in. And on the economical and the financial aspect of it, each accident or each death brings about $1 million in loss to the company in terms of the fines, in terms of insurance, in terms of claims, things like this. And honestly speaking, I feel even $1 million to the family doesn't really bring back a dead person. So it's just like a means to an end. And the other thing is the construction industry or a company, if a death or a major accident happens, they're not able to bid for one entire year. So the whole entire year, they're not able to bid for any more tenders. So they literally do nothing. They just stop work and just sit down and imagine the millions of dollars of loss that they have. And for any accident, like minor to moderate accident, you have about 1 week to 2 weeks of closure. So MOM will enforce a stop work order, and this 2 weeks alone can cause about $2 million of loss for the company. And yeah, consider the economical impact of this. And once an accident happens, right, imagine the reputation damage and imagine the loss of workers' morale. Like imagine going into a site, working at a site, knowing that, oh shit, like last week, a person died here at the exact same spot. So the implications are tremendous. And imagine just a simple technology that could alert a person before it happens. Like let's say you're working too close to an excavator or a crane and you're in a blind spot, like an excavator is operating, the driver doesn't see a worker behind him, and before, like, it could potentially hit the worker and the worker just loses a limb or two. That's like super dangerous. But just having a camera focusing on that kind of a zone, and the moment they come within a proximity or a vicinity of each other, we just sound an alarm, like we just ring a bell. Hey, look out, like this is dangerous, you need to be careful. And the worker just looks behind and just, oh shit, there's an excavator, and he just walks away. So that's the kind of ideas. Imagine working at heights. Working at heights is the most common causes of death in Singapore. People falling down from heights. Like they don't see a hole in the ground. Like that's another problem. And they don't harness properly because they're complacent. And imagine just putting a camera or just some form of fixture there, or some hardware devices that can see whether the worker is wearing a harness properly, that can see whether there are barricades present, and that could potentially save someone's life and save like millions of dollars. So that's the kind of approach we're taking, and that is the kind of technologies that we're working on. Simple monitoring of high-risk activities to prevent any potential accidents that could happen.
Wow, that to me sounds like a winning pitch, man. Like the first thing I think of is like things like when it comes to insurance, like you only really regret not buying it when shit happens. And
Yes.
like a follow-up question, yeah, like what you described to me, I assume that is part of the pitch that you tell your clients as well. One question that I have, right, because this is just a random thought that came to mind when you were just talking about it, like the stats of electric cars in that sense. I think, like, at least for my superficial headline reading of like articles or clickbait stuff, right? They say that the risk of dying from a human driving a car, right, is actually significantly much higher compared to automatic electric cars, whether if it's done by Google or Tesla. Question one, is that true or not from your opinion, from being in this engineering space, right? And second, right, I think more the emphasis more on the second question is that, like, in the end, I think while you can use the kind of the kind of sales tactics that you can use in terms of really convincing, like at the end of the day, I find it so difficult, at least from my perspective, to really come up with a stats that, let's say, okay, when you get Invigilo Technologies products, you will be able to technically reduce the risk of deaths of your company by, let's say, 4-5%. I'm sure you are very familiar with like safety softwares in this industry, like for competitors. Maybe you could share more about that, like how they go about really proving that this works, because at least from the electric car point of view, right, that's I believe one of the kind of things that they say, like the probability of you dying, right, is actually higher when a human is driving compared to an algorithm driving. So yeah, just what's your hot take on that?
Okay, that's I mean that's the kind of question we have been asked a couple of times as well. So in terms of the probability, right, so I'm not sure if you are familiar, but most tech people or most AI people will have this common understanding that it is true, the stats that they say like the probability is lower than human driving, if and only if every single car is autonomous as well. So if every single car in the roads are autonomous, then it'll be a perfect world. Like there'll be no accidents. Like I can assure you there'll be zero accidents.
Okay.
But when you have a mixture of humans and autonomous cars driving, then that is where the issue comes about, where there are a lot of unpredictable situations where autonomous car cannot detect. Like no matter how much you teach the algorithm or how much superior the algorithm is, there will definitely be one case or two cases which it cannot detect. And that is what you see in the news, like, oh, Tesla, okay, I don't want to name names, but there are obviously accidents that happen regularly if you're reading the news. So that's my answer to question one. Same goes with Invigilo. Like, we don't want to position ourselves as completely lowering or completely removing any accidents that happen, but rather complementing the job scope of a safety manager. We want to enhance the role of a safety manager. We don't want to remove his role. So we still are going to be relying on humans to take action, but we want to give them the prompt to take an action. So that is the kind of approach we're taking. And the second question, to me, like, there's a lot of resistance to this because, like you said, it's very hard to prove the improvements. So what we do is actually position it in a mix of both. So we are targeting not just safety, but also productivity. So imagine with the same kind of cameras, you can also identify things like how many workers are in this zone, how many workers are in this floor, which subcontractor is each worker belonging to, how much is this. So let's say you look at a storage space. Is this storage space optimally arranged? Like, are you losing out space because of certain misarrangements? Then you can start having economical benefits as well. Like with the same kind of cameras that protect the workers, it can also add benefits like arrangement properly, housekeeping is done properly, things like how much the utilization of equipment. So like, let's say how much a crane is being used. Are you over utilizing? So let's say you rent a crane for 1 month, but you're only using the crane for like 1 or 2 days. Our machine can see how much your crane is being used. Then we can come in and tell them, hey, you're paying like $2,000 for renting a crane for 1 month, but actually you're only using it for 2 days. So why don't you rent it for 1 week only, or why don't you rent it for 2 days only? You could save up to like 1.8K. So that's the kind of approach we take. And at the same time, hey, look, we are protecting your workers. Like, safety is a byproduct. So to people who care more about productivity, we position ourselves as productivity, and safety is like a byproduct. But the people who care more about safety, we position ourselves as safety, and we say productivity is a byproduct. So all in all, you have a sales pitch which they cannot reject. So that's the kind of approach that we are trying to go towards. And to prove like more firm and like more quantifiable improvements, for that purpose, we have to rely on historic data, and also like enactments. So what I potentially foresee is like we act out a potential hazard, and our system will be able to recognize and warn them. So that's the kind of approach that we're taking at this point of time.
At this point of time, is the current product of Invigilo Technologies capable of like having all these productivities? Like where is the product currently at? Because right now what you're describing to me is really like, wow, like I know I'm not in this contract like business industry, but it makes sense. Like there's so much potential, financial, not only financial, but mental, like there's so many benefits that this product brings aside from just safety alone. So at the current point of time, where is this product? Or is it fully developed in that sense already? And right now it's really just about really bringing on clients.
Okay, so let's not get too excited, because the product I'm speaking of is definitely, I mean, it's possible, but the thing I want to point out is the complexity and intricacies involved in the construction site. So one of the biggest problems that we face in construction is the dynamic nature. You have one floor on day one, you have 2 floors on day 2, you have 3 floors on day 3, or 1 week, or let's say, and you have everything moving around all the time. So my question to myself and to you would be, which camera or where should the cameras be placed such that all this information can be detected? So that's one of the common challenges that we're facing all the time. So no matter how good the technology might eventually be, the cameras are what is limiting, like kind of a limiting aspect to this. So you have to always modify the technology. One of the potential things we're looking towards is also drones and robots. So we want to put our technologies into robots to walk around the terrains and walk around the different construction floors to monitor and do like a safety surveillance kind of thing. So that's kind of that's down our pipeline as well. So it is a lot of fun stuff that's coming along. And in terms of technology readiness, TRL, they say, we are in a stage where we have bits and pieces. Like we have, I'd love to show you videos, but we could do that offline. But we have a few proof of concept videos on different elements, like what I mentioned. Some of them are still confidential and proprietary, so I can't reveal them at this point of time. But a lot of the use cases, we do have about, let's say, 6 or 7 use cases already built. We're in talks with a few clients as well, waiting to hear back from them. And like, the whole construction industry is stopped. And that is why there's a lot of delays. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be coming across 1 or 2 projects down the road, like in your own personal life, that is using Invigilo technology. So I can assure of that, because the kind of projects we're potentially looking to work on are really public and really touristy kind of vibes. Like they're, not touristy, but big scale. Like they're not just some minor thing. So if you happen to go past the construction site, it's probably using Invigilo. So hopefully that's the goal at the end of the day. But that's the kind of stage right now, confirming paperwork, confirming the camera placement. We still have to train the models. So as you know, a huge element of artificial intelligence is getting the relevant video footage, because the machine won't be able to perform well until it has context of what it's going to be seeing. So it'll take some time, but I can assure you that in like 3-4 months, we'll be having a few projects that we're working on. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, wow. Like, okay, that's what fascinates me about like all this kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? If I were me to go one step back all the way to, let's say, for a student, let's say interested in doing a startup in that sense, right? The first thing that probably comes to mind is the financial means to make it survive. And like they say, cash flow is the oxygen of all businesses in that sense, right? So I'm just wondering from your perspective, because I know that you have received a lot of supports from like institutions and grants. From your perspective, how did you manage this problem on your end?
Okay. Yeah. So I guess not from I was being too technical just now. So let's talk about like the more.
No. I think it's necessary. And like
emotional.
to me, it's really useful to have that like technical context as much as possible, and that's the reason why I really like talking to people in this field, like Kin saying, or engineers in general. Like the way they think, right? Seriously, like wow, like I could never think of something like, oh yeah. So that's what I like about it. But more towards more of the macro things that perhaps person who's thinking on starting on this venture, because I think perhaps your experience will be useful whether if it's to a marketing student or let's say an engineer student.
Yeah. So for myself, I decided to take a plunge, just jump into the deep end. Firstly, video analytics, if you're familiar with technology, is not a simple kind of technology. Secondly, construction industry is not simple as well, because I just explained to you the dynamic nature. The most common video analytics type of solutions are catered to retail, security. That's very well established. You have huge companies doing that. So in terms of financial, and the reason I chose was because I'm definitely grateful for the fact that my parents have been very supportive, and my parents did offer me a lot of like financial benefits in the sense. I still, they're very supportive in that element. In terms of institutional grants, we got a grant from NUS. It's not that much, but I've been making do with that till now. It's all about believing firmly in your passion, believing that you can make it happen. There were people who came and like joined me and left along the journey. So it has been like a pretty tough journey. But I think the crucial element is actually the passion and the ability to convince like 1 or 2 or 3 other people to join you in this passion or join in this vision and try to make something happen. And at this point of time, I must say that I do have the financial abilities to support myself, mainly because of the grants I've got. One grant I got from NUS and the parents' grant, if I must say, and also my own savings. And I feel like at this age is the best time to actually try something like this, because I feel like as I grow older, like I will have a lot more commitments tied down to a lot of other things. I would require money then. For now, I can still survive on like simple meals every day and just not traveling that much. And COVID kind of came at the right time, so I don't have to travel out overseas anyway. So yeah, it's all about having the passion, having the ability to convince a group of people to follow you. And the last thing is actually, like I mentioned, trying to basically get things done with whatever you have. Like, I think I must attribute a lot to it from my own current situation. Like, I'm not. I must say that I'm grateful that my parents. Yeah, basically, I was able to survive on my own for this period of time because I have no commitments. I just want to all out explore entrepreneurship. That's the kind of reasons. Yeah.
One difficulty at least I have, because like for myself, you talk about really finding the people and really convincing them, right? So on my part, like, I have involved myself in, let's say, trying to convince people of like technically joining your mission in that sense. So from your experience, at least I know it's something that's very, very difficult to do. And in a sense, time is magic, in a sense whereby over time you will be able to really see that whether you can really work well with someone or not. So at least from your experience of having watched people come and go or watched people come and stay, right? Is there any kind of advice would you give to someone to finding, in a sense, business partners, business founders? Because I really do think that people who do things by themselves, who are obsessed at doing things by themselves, technically can only get so far. Because to
Yes,
really
you're right.
scale up to the moon, you just need to have a team of complementary skill sets. So I feel that the skill of really trying to convince someone, it's an art of itself as well. So I just want to know from your perspective, was there any lessons that you learned in terms of getting people to join you? I think that to me is the most difficult thing.
Yeah, it is. So honestly, I must say that I have not mastered the art yet because I have a very solid team and they are very committed. So maybe now it's like more or less settled. But I think that you raise a very, very important point because not just from your own personal perspective, even from an investor's perspective, the core thing that they always look for is actually the team, how committed they are and how talented and how whether the team can get things done. So as much as you can tend to believe that you can do things by yourself, you can do the whole product by yourself, it is not going to be happening. Like you cannot make it happen by yourself. So I want to bring up one of my teammates at this point of time. So he joined us as an intern. He's actually a student in India. So I actually posted a job application for looking for an intern, and it was on Intern SG. But then he saw it from India and he applied. And he, so the first month was like pretty good. Like he's super smart guy. He's from a good university in India. And after the first month, I was paying him like a minimum salary for an intern pay. And after the first 1 month or 2 months, he suddenly told me like, hey, I really love what I'm doing. I really love working with you. And the projects are super cool. I would want to continue as an unpaid intern. Like he literally just told me, I don't mind being an intern, but I'll be unpaid. Yeah. So I don't know about the non-technical and marketing kind of roles, but getting an unpaid intern for a technical hands-on coder is actually close to impossible.
A coder. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's AI engineer with a lot of experience, like
wow.
in project and yeah. So that to me is actually a huge validation of my like my attributes as a leader, because I felt like I was able to communicate well and set expectations clear with him. And secondly, the idea itself. So he likes the idea, he likes what he's working on, and he wanted to work on free. And he's still in my team right now, and we already have arrangements to bring him over to Singapore once he graduates from university. And the rest of the team, I put them together. So of course, like you said, it's very hard people come and go. And I've experienced that personally. It's very, very tough. There were times which I felt like quitting. Like entrepreneurship is a super lonely journey. Every single day you'll be wondering, like, I wish I had another one of myself to understand. I wish I had another one who could relate to me the way I did. So that's the kind of thought to have. But the key is actually setting expectations. So when you join a team or when you bring in someone, you clearly lay out what you want from him and what you believe the vision is going to be for Invigilo or your startup, and you have open communication. So that is the kind of a thing. And of course, you have to do like leadership stuff, like promise them certain things, continually engage with clients, tell them that this is going well. It's a lot about it's like a game. So you increase their appetite to work better. You promise them what they'll get in return. They teach you and you teach them. You promise them that's a growing journey together. You don't dictate. You don't have to you shouldn't be authoritarian, because all of us are in it to be learning together. So that's the most important thing. Open communication, growth mindset, and setting expectations clearly. Yeah.
Could you share with more stories? I think there's really more like this story itself is like, wow. Like, are there any stories in the sense whereby any challenges along the way that you feel that are worth sharing? Because from my point of view, right, I think like this conversation is only limited to the time that we have, but I'm sure that is there any other stories that you think is worth sharing in terms of going on? To me, like really, like when I was at a crossroads myself of whether to really like do it myself, right? The things that were just going through my mind, like wow, like there's just so many things coming at you at the same time, lah. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, how do you cope with it? Let's say being on the fence of really going all in on this. Any more stories? I'm just interested to hear more stories.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a lot of stories. I went through a lot of things actually, because the choices I made are very, very different from what a normal human being would have made. So, I guess I could talk in general, like the kind of lessons I've obtained from last few months, let's say. So, one of the story is that, okay, I literally had no idea what the construction industry is. I literally had no idea what was going to be possible or not. I literally had no idea what video analytics is and how it's even done, but I just jumped in. So the first step for any aspiring entrepreneur is actually to just take the plunge, to just take the deep dive. And don't just jump in like foolishly, or like, you have to understand that it is going to be a learning journey. You can't be expected to know everything from the very start. So it's you basically break it down now. You have a big picture, like you have like a huge task, like you have this whole big vision, and then you break it down into small pieces, and you hit them one at a time. So I actually set out a lot of goals for myself, set like actionables and responsibilities for myself, and just go one at a time. So I started getting more and more familiar with the construction domain, got more familiar with video analytics, AI, started talking with a lot of my friends. Yeah, I cannot emphasize the importance of networking and talking to people. Every single person you don't talk to is a wasted opportunity, in my opinion, for entrepreneurs at least. Anything can be turned into a favorable partnership if you do it properly. So that's something I learned. In terms of stories, I can be pretty open about it. Both my co-founders who started off initially left the company. So I'm the sole kind of original OG founder of this startup. And my first co-founder, he's an amazing guy from material science as well. He left because of other commitments. He saw other opportunity, and because he was facing financial difficulty, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, financial and emotional stability. So he had financial instability and he decided to pursue that instead. My second co-founder had emotional instability. He felt like the problem was too overwhelming for him. So he then left in about March. And that was when I was brought down to my lowest point, because COVID struck, the whole circuit breaker happened, and I was just alone, isolated, just thinking every single day about, is this even going to happen? Is all my efforts in the past wasted? I literally have no job for like 4 or 5 months. So is this going to be the end of it? And I was like, hey, I have nothing to lose. I'm at a place where I have nothing anyway. So why not just give it a shot? And that was when I decided to reach out to all my friends, my computer science friends. They tapped on their network, and I found another co-founder who is like extremely talented computer engineer. And then I found the intern was still with me till then. We were still working. I was talking to clients still, but with a very demoralized face. Like they could tell, like they felt like the energy was gone. They even asked me like, what happened? Like, how come you're suddenly so quiet and dull? I literally felt like there was no reason to continue, because both my teammates left, and the second one left because he felt like the idea was not possible. So it was a huge blow to my confidence and the whole team. But the good thing is we're still good, very close friends, and we left on good terms. So that was a kind of like it was a good thing. And that taught me the importance of choosing the right person, or grooming to be the right person. Nobody is the right person until you become the right person. So that's something I learned. I went in being a wrong person, but I stuck through. I adapted. Adaptability, determination is very important, and you have to stick through. You have to believe in the process, and ultimately you'll start to morph into this person who you initially wanted to be. So that's the kind of approach I had. I went in knowing that I was not the person I wanted to be, but I knew that if I was to take this step, I'll become the person I wanted to be. So that was why I decided to take that approach.
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing, because I know this is definitely very, very tough, right? In terms of like pillars of support, in terms of how do you cope with it? Is it for yourself? How do you cope with it? Is it more of conversations with your other friends, your families, or is it really more of really just as much as possible taking concrete steps? And because I feel that I empathize, but obviously I don't, because your the stakes at where you're at, right? It's really how do could you share more how do you cope with it in a sense? Because I think it's really something very difficult. Like for me, I'm just drawing on my own analogies of, let's say, like my own projects as well, like people leaving, as like that's a big blow in that sense. But like,
Yeah.
how else do you cope with it?
Yeah, imagine like the few people you kind of conceptualize and push the idea with suddenly disappear. Then you're left alone, like nobody else. I literally had no team. So yeah, it was crazy, man. Like there were a lot of times I just felt like, okay, you know what? I have a I mean, not bragging or what, but I have a decent resume, I have a decent CV portfolio. I can just apply to another job and just go the corporate route. But I was like, hey, you know, I came this far and I shouldn't stop here. Like I should go to the real extreme, like see what I'm capable of. Like, you know, if you don't go to the extreme, there's always a chance for regret. So that's what I told myself, like, you know, you will never know until you push yourself to the extremes. So the moment you go to the extreme, then you'll know whether it is meant for you or not. So that's what I told myself. And in terms of pillars of support, of course, I must say my family was always there for me. So I always talk to them. I mean, sometimes, you know, like Asian parents, they do say like, oh man, you just wasted your entire time. You should have done this. I told you so. But ultimately, at the bottom of their heart, they were still caring. And they told me like, yeah, I know you put in a lot of effort. At times they were a bit like, they didn't want me to do it again, but they saw how much it mattered to me and they did support me. And I must not, I mean, of course, my friends as well. Like I have a bunch of close friends, NOC friends, who I always reach out to when I have these kind of problems. And they told me the same things are like, nothing to lose, it's now or never. And the other most crucial thing that helped me was actually delving more into the concept of spirituality and meditation. So I actually spent a whole lot of time actually doing all this like very millennial thing to do, but I was very into spirituality and I was trying to understand, I was meditating on a daily basis, trying to understand what mattered to me and thinking of things a lot more rationally and logically. So that was the kind of 3 ways that I got over it. And I knew that from the very beginning, entrepreneurship is something that I'm super crazy about and it will be a wasted opportunity if I did not have my own startup at the end of the day. So that was my ideology. And to me, even till today, I'm not a successful entrepreneur yet. I don't consider myself as having a startup because a startup to me is when you have successfully delivered a product that a customer likes. And I'm still striving every single day to achieve that goal of mine.
Got it. Okay. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Right. In terms of spirituality, it's also something that I'm very interested in. Like in terms of, like I've been listening to a lot of podcasts related to spirituality. Like but it's more in lines like because we are based in Singapore. Like there's a lot of psychedelics or all the kind of different kind of realms. Or meditation is definitely one of them. I must say I do try my best to practice it, but I haven't been as consistent. But I really feel like there's a calmness that you get when you practice it in a sense. So I really appreciate you for sharing all this because I think like there's a lot more conversations that can be held with regards to the realities of entrepreneurship, and
yes,
like I have it on. Yeah, a lot of people in a sense glamorize it. There's a lot of things in a sense like it's a whole publicity of it, but when you're really in it, right? I really thank you for really taking the time to really have this platform to even like talk about this, and I really feel that there should be more conversations about it. One thing that comes to mind is that just on a separate question, is there any kind of entrepreneurs that you look up to as inspirational figures in terms of helping you motivate you in what you're doing, or it's mainly this intrinsic drive that you have on your side to always really want to make this happen? Is it more of a, is there like a, is it like a spectrum, like 20% extrinsic, 80% intrinsic, or is really more for yourself? My question is that, is there any external source that helps you drive this startup?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, definitely like you mentioned, the startup journey is not a simple one. It's super complicated and it's not as amazing and beautiful as most people portray it to be. And like there are a lot of times where you feel lonely and the imposter syndrome also hits you, where you feel that you don't actually have what it takes to basically like deliver to your ability, or like so that is a pretty common phase that most entrepreneurs experience. the publicity of it comes when you spend a lot more time trying to publicize it. So I feel like if your startup is actually meant to do a startup, or if you're actually solving a problem that you wouldn't have time publicizing it, it will actually naturally happen. So to me, it'll come. It's going to take time, but it will definitely happen. In terms of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, of course, I look up to a few people. One of the prominent people I look up to is actually Satya Nadella, from the CEO of Google, Microsoft. Both Google and Microsoft are the people I look up to a lot, Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella. In fact, it's because also Satya Nadella is from the same hometown that I was from in India. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And of course, the infamous Elon Musk. These three guys are people I look up to. In fact, I know that nobody's perfect. All three of them have their own flaws, but the pros are so strong that they themselves are something which I always try to emulate and learn from. And I read a lot of books. Like one of the first books is one of the books I recommend is The Founder's Dilemma. So The Founder's Dilemma is basically the ugly truths of being a founder. So it talks about different ways that a startup dies. So to me, although that's a very demoralizing thing, it puts the expectations in place before a person jumps in, because you don't want to start up something thinking that it's like amazing and it's going to be like, oh, you're going to be famous, you're going to be earning a lot of money and stuff. No, a startup is fun, it's amazing, but it's not the right choice if you want to make a lot of money. It's not the right choice if you want to be super famous and have a lot of friends. This is not, so it kind of sets expectations in place, because you don't want to go into something not knowing what it actually is. So to entrepreneurs or to aspiring entrepreneurs, I think the most important thing is actually know what an entrepreneur does and know what it is to be an entrepreneur. Because most of the times, your impression of what an entrepreneur is very different from what an actual entrepreneur does on a daily basis. And most founders try to make it look a lot better than what it actually is, because they want to look cool and they want to be or look amazing on social media. So yeah, that's something I feel.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I strongly resonate with that as well. Like, if you look at the marketing funnel in a sense, right? I feel that, let's say, really having a product that really solves the problem is really the core need. So sometimes on my end, I'm also very frustrated at myself. Like for myself, I have side hustles as well, right? So like, I'm doing all this like top of funnel LinkedIn content and like podcast, in a sense. Like this podcast is more of like a top of funnel, but I feel that like I haven't really had the time on my side to really create a product that really solves the customer need. And I think that in a sense it's really different skill sets, but at the end of the day, right, I'll really argue it's more of the bottom funnel, in a sense whereby it's that product and at the end of the day which is the most important thing. And
yeah. And honestly speaking, like, sorry, just say on, like, there's nothing wrong with being not an entrepreneur. Like, I mean, many people these days like to think that being an entrepreneur is amazing, is very cool. Like, they want to start their own thing, they want to start. Yeah, but if everyone is a startup founder, then who's going to be the ones working in the companies? Like, it's like, I don't like to like, how do you put it? Like, I don't want to romanticize what entrepreneurship. Like, it is definitely a tough path, but it's not meant for everyone. Like, don't try to fit yourself into, I mean, not for you per se, I mean, not saying to you in person, but like in general, like, try not to force yourself to be an entrepreneur if you feel that you're not meant out to be an entrepreneur. I mean, end of the day, everything is beautiful, everything is important. The world cannot run without everyone. So the company needs all kind of people. So I mean, there's this one famous story which always I remember. Like, there's this janitor in NASA who was interviewed, and before people found out he was a janitor, when they asked him, like, so what do you do? And he says, oh, I send rockets to the moon, or he says, I send rockets to space. Then afterwards, when people ask him, what do you do? He says, oh, I'm a janitor. But yeah, I mean, even a janitor has a role to play in sending rockets to space. Like, it's nothing wrong with being a janitor. You have to be proud of it. Like, it's all about ownership, initiative, and liking what you do.
Yeah. Yes, I completely agree with you. Like, in a sense, there's a lot of hype on entrepreneurship, and I myself, I have also struggled at a point of period whereby, am I an entrepreneur? But I've come to the realization as of right now, I don't think I'm an entrepreneur, in a sense, because the balls and the courage to do this is really something that is so big, right? So I think we shouldn't. On that note, like this conversation has made me think of, let's say, people demonizing the education system in a sense whereby people say that like you shouldn't go to college because the education system is broken. But I think that's an unfair argument against people who college is meant for in that sense, because people are saying like college is not good in that sense. So sorry, it's just one random thought that comes to mind, right?
Makes sense.
But Vishnu, thanks so much for sharing this, right? I feel really there should be more discourse and discussion about the realities of being an entrepreneur. So thanks so much for sharing this. And I to end all this podcast, right, just last few short fire questions, right? What is the best advice have you ever received?
Oh wow, okay. This is something that I liked a lot. You can't win everything. You have to win some and lose some. Like,
wow.
I coming from a very competitive background, right? I want to have everything. Like I want to be winning everything. I mean, winning. I'm not saying in an arrogant manner, but more of like, you have to accept that you win some and lose some. You can lose the smaller battles, but you win the war. So that's the kind of approach that I'm taking these days. You don't have to like do everything. You just focus on what you like, and you eventually win the war. Yeah.
Got it. What's the worst advice have you ever received?
Worst advice. Okay. So one guy told me like, it does make sense, but I don't think it should be given out as advice. So what he told me was, an engineer can always become a business person, but a business person can never be an engineer. So I feel that it's kind of like makes sense, but then again,
is that from Bill Gates?
Sorry?
Is that from Bill Gates?
No. This is from a professor in NUS. He told me I made the wrong choice in starting my own company. He told me like, oh, you should work in a company. You should work as an engineer for a few years before becoming the business kind of roles, like business lead or product managers kind of thing. But I told him, oh no, I want to do product management. I want to do startup. I want to do my own entrepreneurial journey. He's like, oh no, you'll regret it in the future. But I mean, that's his advice, and I see where it's coming from. So it's completely fair.
Got it.
Yeah.
1 year from now, what tangible events would you want to happen that would make it the best year for your life?
Wow, 1 year. So definitely having so I want to have more than one sale, but the first sale is going to be something that will make it a lot memorable. So like the first kind of, not the Invigilo Shield, but our actual Invigilo product, the construction safety and productivity. So rolling this out in one of the major construction sites will be definitely something super important to me. Secondly, is actually, it might seem small, but having an office space where our whole team can work and interact together, that's something I'm actually looking forward to a lot. You have no idea how much I'm looking forward to it, because right now we have a table and hanger and that's about it. And my whole team is mostly remote and operating remotely, not just because of COVID, but because of location as well. And the third thing could probably be like investment, like getting the VC funding. So looking to raise our first round not soon, maybe about 6-7 months from now. So that'll be a pretty big tangible thing for myself. And with that, we're going to scale up to not just Singapore, but the whole Southeast Asia region. So that is the goal. Yeah.
Got it, Vishnu. Thanks so much for sharing, right? I'm sure it will be a tough road ahead, and I really wish you all the best, right? And
thanks so much.
I really want to take the time specifically really towards the conversations about entrepreneurship. I really think that more can be said for starting entrepreneurs, like, because I've been doing this podcast for quite a while. I've talked to like people who have like are out there already, but I think it's really the whole spectrum and like really seeing the journey and perhaps similarities as well. And I do see a trend that you have amongst other entrepreneurs that I've met previously. So I really wish you all the best. Thanks so much for coming on this podcast. And for any listeners out there who is interested in reaching out to you, where are you most active on? And how can they reach you?
You can check out Invigilo Technologies on LinkedIn. You can just message me on LinkedIn as well. You can also email me at vishnu@invigilo.sg. So vishnu@invigilo.sg. INVIGILO. So yeah, you can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a chat, coffee or something once COVID. I'm down having now as well. But yeah, so I'd love to share more.
Got it. I'll be linking everything in the video description. And Vishnu, thanks so much, and hope to see you soon on this podcast very soon.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you so much.